Atomic Habits by James Clear. In the first chapter of the book, Atomic Habits by James Clear, the author explains how small motor changes in our habits have a significant impact on our lives over time. He calls these small changes atomic habits and emphasizes how they build up over time to produce remarkable results. Clear gives examples of how small habit changes have helped athletes, artists, and entrepreneurs achieve success. He explains that the purpose of the book is to help readers understand the importance of atomic habits and how we can use them to improve our lives. It is also clear to emphasize the importance of paying attention to our daily habits and how they guide in our lives. He argues that too often, we overlook the importance of small daily habits and instead focus on big changes that we hope will transform our lives. The author concludes the chapter with the idea that success is not the result of one big change, but the result of consistent small changes over time. He believes that understanding and applying atomic habits is the key to achieving lasting success. In the second chapter of the book, Atomic Habits, by James Clear, the author explains how our habits shape our identity and vice versa. He argues that we often think of changing our habits as a matter of willpower, when in fact, change starts with changing identity. He clearly argues that our identity is formed by beliefs we have about ourselves and that our habits are an expression of these beliefs. For example, if we believe we are a healthy person, we accept to have healthy eating and exercise habits. Likewise, our habits can strengthen our current identity, which can make it difficult to change our habits. The author argues that in order to change our habits, we need to change our identity first. He suggests that the best way to do this is to start with small, consistent habits that reinforce the identity we want to have. For example, if we want to become more active people, we can start with a small daily habit like walking for 10 minutes. Clear also highlights the importance of using language that reinforces a new identity that we want to have. He suggests that instead of saying, "I want to stop smoking," we should say, "I am no longer a smoker." This change in language helps strengthen the new identity we want to have and can make changing habits easier. The author concludes the chapter by emphasizing that our habits and identity are interdependent and that habit change begins with identity change. He suggests that the best way to change our habits is to start with small consistent changes that reinforce the identity we want to have. In the third chapter of James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, the author presents a simple 4-step model for building better habits. The first step is to make the habit clear. I make a clear argument that many times we don't follow our habits because we don't remember them. To make a habit clear, he suggests things like developing a visual habit, making the habit part of our daily routine, or even putting things in strategic places to remind ourselves. The second step is to make the habit attractive. Clear argument that if we want to adopt a habit, we need to find a way to make it attractive and enjoyable. This can be done by adding a reward or making the habit social so we can do it with others. The third step is to make the habit easy. Clear argument that many times we do not follow our habits because they are difficult or encouraged a lot of effort. To make a habit easy, he suggests things like simplifying the process or lowering the barrier to entry to get started. The fourth step is to force the habit. I argue clearly that if we want to maintain a habit, we need to make it reinforcing and rewarding. This can be done by adding an immediate reward or finding ways to celebrate progress. It is clear to emphasize that these 4 steps work together to make adopting habits easier and more sustainable. He suggests that by applying these steps, we can create better, lasting habits in our lives. In Chapter 4 of the book, Atomic Habits, by James Clear, the author tells the story of David Brailsford, coach of the British cycling team, who used the concept of marginal improvement to transform the team into gold medal winners in the Olympics from Beijing and London. The idea of marginal improvement is based on the belief that small improvements can lead to big changes over time. My clear argument is that we often hope to seek big changes in our lives, but this can be difficult to achieve. Instead, he suggests we should focus on making consistent, small improvements day in and day out. Brailsford applied this idea to cycling, looking for small improvements in all aspects of the team, from training to the rider's diet and even the quality of the tires used on the bikes. Each small improvement accumulated over time and led to better and better team performance. It is clear to emphasize that marginal improvement can be applied to any area of our lives, not just sports. He suggests that we should identify the small improvements we can make to our daily habits and work to consistently implement them. He argues that by doing so, we can achieve big changes in our lives over time. The author concludes the chapter by emphasizing that marginal improvement is an ongoing process and that, to achieve success, we must be willing to work consistently, even if improvements remain small at the moment. He suggests that we should focus on improving by 1% every day, and over time, these small improvements can lead to big changes in our lives. In Chapter 5 of the book, Atomic Habits, by James Clear, the author discusses the best way to start a new habit. He argues that it often starts with enthusiasm, but quickly loses its motivation. Clear suggests that the best way to start a new habit is to start with something so small that it's tried too easy to fail. He calls this the 2-minute rule, where the goal is to make the habit so easy that it can be completed in 2 minutes or less. For example, if we want to start exercising, rather than committing to an hour of the gym every day, Clear suggests starting with just 2 minutes of exercise, like doing a set of sit-ups. This makes the habit so easy that it's nearly impossible to fail, which makes it more likely that we'll keep doing it every day. Clearly emphasize that the purpose of the 2-minute rule is to build the habit in an easy and consistent way. As the habit becomes easier, we can gradually increase the duration or intensity. The author also suggests other strategies to make forming habits easier and more consistent, such as finding a partner to encourage and support, recording progress, and creating an environment that supports the new habit. Clear concludes the chapter by emphasizing that the goal is to build a solid foundation of small, easy habits before focusing on bigger, more challenging habits. He suggests that by making a habit of starting small, we can build the willpower and consistency needed to achieve big changes in our lives. In Chapter 6 of James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, the author argues that motivation is overrated and that the key to building lasting habits is consistency. Claro explains that we often rely on motivation to get us to do what we need to do. However, motivation is inevitable and can quickly disappear. Instead, he suggests we should focus on creating an environment that facilitates consistency in our habits. The author discusses the idea that motivation is an emotion and that emotions are difficult to control. Rather than trying to control our emotions, he suggests we should focus on controlling our environment and habits. That means creating an environment that facilitates our habits and eliminates distractions that can impede our consistency. Of course, I also argue that motivation usually comes as a result of action rather than preceding it. When we started to do something, our motivation increases. So it's important to start acting, even if we're not feeling motivated right now. The author suggests that the best way to create consistency is to create a plan that is easy to follow, clearly define desired outcomes, and monitor our progress. He emphasizes the importance of starting small and gradually building our habits. Clear concludes the chapter by emphasizing that the key to creating lasting habits is consistency, not motivation. He suggests that by creating an environment that facilitates consistency, we can increase our likelihood of success in reaching our goals and build healthy, positive habits into our lives. In Chapter 7 of James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, the author discusses the secret of self-control and how we can develop an ability to resist attempts and create positive habits. Clear argument that self-control is a learned skill, not something people simply have or don't have. He suggests that to develop self-control we need to understand how it works and how we can strengthen it. The author explains that self-control is limited and can be depleted with excessive use. This means that if we expend a lot of energy trying to resist one attempt, we are more likely to give in to another attempt later on. He calls it decision fatigue and suggests that to overcome it, we need to create habits that reduce the need to make decisions. Clear also discusses the idea that self-control is easier to maintain when we are motivated and committed to a goal. He suggests that to maintain our motivation, we need to create a connection between our habits and our identity. This means that instead of just wanting to change our behavior, we need to believe that we are a person who already has these positive habits. The author suggests that, in order to develop self-control, we need to practice resisting temptations in small doses. This means creating situations where we can control our ability to resist, such as avoiding an unhealthy snack or waking up early each day. Of course, also emphasize the importance of creating an environment that facilitates resistance to attempts. This means eliminating distractions and creating barriers that keep us from giving in to temptations. Clear concludes the chapter by emphasizing that by developing our capacity for self-control, we can create positive and lasting habits. He suggests that by practicing resisting attempts and creating an environment that facilitates consistency in our habits, we can increase our likelihood of success in achieving our goals. In Chapter 8 of Atomic Habits, titled How to Make a Habit Irresistible, James Clear discusses how we can create habits that are attractive and therefore easier to follow. Clear begins by explaining that our habits are often shaped by cue signals that lead us to act in certain ways. He calls this the trigger cue, and argues that by changing these cue signals, we can influence our habits. The author suggests that to create irresistible habits, we need to make them attractive, easy, and rewarding. He discusses several strategies for achieving this, starting with the idea of bundling habits. This means grouping habits that we already do naturally with new habits that we want to develop. For example, if we already brush our teeth every morning, we can add meditation practice right after brushing. Clear also discusses an idea of creating habits that are visually appealing and remind us of our goals. This can include things like placing a bowl of fruit on the kitchen counter to encourage healthy eating habits. The author argues that to make a habit irresistible, we need to make it easy. This can include things like reducing the amount of effort required to perform a habit or creating an environment that facilitates consistency. Clear suggests we should offer ways to streamline the habit-building process, such as making the practice shorter or breaking it down into smaller chunks. Finally, Clear discusses the importance of making it pleasurable by adding a reward at the end of practicing a habit. He suggests that rewards should be immediate and specific, and we should look for ways to make them more and more attractive as we go along. In summary, to make a habit irresistible, we must make it attractive, easy, and enjoyable. Clear offers several strategies for achieving these goals, including creating habit packages, making habits visually appealing, simplifying the habit creation process, and adding rewards. By applying these strategies, we can increase our likelihood of success in creating lasting, positive habits. In Chapter 9 of Atomic Habits, titled The Role of Family and Friends in Forming Your Habits, James Clear discusses how the people around us can have a big impact on our habits. Clear begins by explaining that the culture and norms of behavior of a social group influence the habits of the people who are part of it. He argues that, if we want to change our habits, we must start by changing the culture of the social group in which we are inserted. The author also discusses the role of the family in forming habits, explaining that many of our habits are acquired at home. He suggests that if we want to create healthy habits, we should start by influencing the environment we live in, making it more conducive to the practice of healthy habits. Clear also argues that friends can have a big impact on our habits, and suggests that we should try to surround ourselves with people who have positive habits that they would like to acquire. He also suggests that if we want to change a habit, we should seek support from friends and family who can help us stay consistent. The author also discusses the importance of finding a support group to help create new habits. This can include joining common interest groups, such as running clubs or book groups, where we can meet people who plan our goals and desires. In summary, Chapter 9 of Atomic Habits emphasizes the importance of social influences in shaping our habits. Clear suggests that, if we want to change our habits, we must start by changing the culture of the social group in which we are inserted and try to surround ourselves with people who have positive habits that they would like to acquire. He also emphasizes the importance of finding a support group to help with forming new habits. By doing so, we can increase our likelihood of success in creating lasting, positive habits. In Chapter 10 of Atomic Habits, entitled How to Find and Correct the Causes of Your Bad Habits, James Clear addresses the question of how to identify and correct the bad habits we have. Clear starts by explaining that we often focus on the symptoms of our bad habits rather than looking for their underlying causes. He argues that if we want to change our bad habits, we must first understand what is causing them. The author suggests that there are four main causes for bad habits: stress, boredom, loneliness, and lack of self-esteem. He argues that if we can identify what causes are behind our bad habits, we can start working on solving the underlying problem. Clear also discusses the importance of self-reflection in identifying our bad habits. He suggests that instead of judging ourselves for our bad habits, we should ask ourselves why we are doing these things and what we can do to change. The author also talks about the importance of planning ahead to avoid bad habits. He suggests that we should anticipate situations that might cause us to indulge in our bad habits and plan a healthy alternative for those situations. Emphasize clearly that changing bad habits is not easy and can take time. He suggests that we must be patient and persistent in our quest to identify and correct the underlying causes of our bad habits. In summary, Chapter 10 of Atomic Habits emphasizes the importance of identifying the underlying causes of our bad habits. Clear suggests that by doing so, we can start working on solving the underlying problem and more effectively change our bad habits. He also emphasizes the importance of self-reflection and planning ahead in creating healthy habits and overcoming bad ones. Chapter 11 of Atomic Habits, titled Tread Slowly but Never Backwards, discusses the importance of tolerance and gradual progress in forming habits. James Clear argues that success in achieving our goals does not come from big changes or sudden changes, but rather from small consistent actions over time. He advocates that instead of focusing on immediate results, we should focus on improving a little bit every day. The author also addresses the idea that we often expect the results of our efforts to be immediate, but that most improvements are invisible until they accumulate into something significant. He suggests that instead of waiting for dramatic change, we should focus on gradual and continuous improvements. I clearly argue that it is important to understand that habits are cumulative and that each action we take brings us closer or further away from our goals. He suggests that by focusing on consistency and gradual progress, we can avoid the ups and downs of a goal-based approach and avoid giving up when we don't see immediate results. The author also discusses the importance of patience and persistence in forming habits. He suggests that we should be willing to keep working on our habits even when we don't see immediate results. In summary, Chapter 11 of Atomic Habits emphasizes the importance of consistency and gradual progress in forming habits. Clear suggests that by focusing on advanced improvements and avoiding waiting for immediate results, we can more effectively and lastingly achieve our goals. He also emphasizes the importance of patience and persistence in forming habits. Conclusion: in the final chapter of Atomic Habits, entitled Advance a Little Every Day, James Clear reiterates the importance of small habits to achieve achieved results. He argues that real change comes from small, consistent actions over time, and encourages readers to focus on their systems and processes rather than just their goals. It is clear to emphasize that true success comes from a long-term commitment to the habit-forming process, not a quest for immediate results. He encourages readers to adopt a continuous improvement mindset and focuses on making a little progress each day rather than waiting for sudden, dramatic changes. The author also discusses the importance of consistency and persistence in habit formation and argues that small experimental changes can lead to big results over time. He encourages readers to buy into the idea that improvement is an ongoing process and that it is important to be willing to commit to the long-term habit-forming process. Clear concludes the book by reiterating that success in reaching our goals and transforming our lives comes from small daily habits, not big changes or instant transformations. He encourages readers to commit to the habit-forming process and keep making progress a little bit each day, remembering that, at the end of the day, it's consistency that leads to long-lasting results.